The sponsor of this episode is Chadwell Supply, an OG in the multifamily industry. Chadwell Supply is the largest privately owned maintenance and repair supplier, and they deliver orders the next day from local warehouses across the United States. To find out how Chadwell Supply will make your day better, visit www.chadwellsupply.com/difference.
Hello, and welcome to Optimized, a marketing performance podcast brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network. I'm Janet Rosseth, your host and a 25-year veteran of multifamily marketing. This podcast is going to challenge you to reach 1% better somewhere in your daily life, and optimizing is how we'll do that together. Whether it's bringing your personal best to your work and life, building efficient work processes, uncovering new trends, or making sense of meaningful data, we'll dig in together and find that 1%. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Optimized, a marketing performance podcast. I'm your host, Janet Rosseth, 25-year veteran in multifamily marketing, and I'm joined here today with Scott Hill from Perq, our guest today. We're going to chat all things optimized, and specifically, I want to file this one under building efficient work processes. I think we're going to really dig into lead management and marketing spend and how the two really need to function together. Scott, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Jan. Thanks for having me. So I'm Scott Hill. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Perq. So we have a digital marketing platform that helps everyone have some of these work processes be able to be improved around the advertising and lead generation and the conversion all through the funnel for creating a better, more efficient advertising spend for better results.
So you have landed yourself fully in multifamily marketing, but
Correct.
You didn't originate in multifamily. Tell us how you got your start.
Yep, so I'm one of those outsiders. We've been in it for 6 years now, so we joke that we don't know what exactly the threshold is to say you're a part of the multifamily, but we feel like we've learned a great deal. My co-founder and I came from actually high considered purchase retail. So automotive was one of those, home furnishings, and really specializing on helping them be able to capture more leads for their marketing efforts, their website. But we came across multifamily industry actually through working with Perq Furniture, who works a lot with the multifamily industry. And we saw what was happening in that industry a good 6 years ago and saw wow, there's actually a lot of areas we can be able to help this industry be able to make some of the leap into what we have found more effective and efficient ways to be able to be marketing themselves. And so we started in that process 6 years ago and have been committed to it since.
I feel like for some people, it's 6 days and you're pretty much a seasoned veteran in this industry, or 6 years and you're still just learning it. But You've been, 6 years in the industry, you put that in perspective, and 5 of it was during COVID.
Yeah, true. That was
coming in the industry when we broke everything. So you're probably having to study up a little bit on what history looked like for this industry and what it looks like now. And I know we're going to get to that conversation because some of the discovery that you did on that literally blew my mind on putting in perspective why we do the things we do, which sometimes can be a little confusing.
Yeah.
And you and I have had conversations too on just the difference of marketing perspective in this industry. So we've got different sophistication levels. We've got different ownership types. We've got third-party management. We've got owned portfolios. And we've got marketers who came up through the industry and maybe take more of a perspective from the leasing lens. And then we've got marketers who came to the industry from somewhere else and take more of a lead funnel perspective in the strategies that they focus on. And I think we're going to have a fun conversation today on just what you've learned about the nuances of the industry and our history and how we have gotten to where we are today, because honestly, we're a little broken. We tend to look at things from the bottom of the funnel instead of the top. And you shared a document with me that you crafted on trying to just get your head around how we do the things we do. So share with us, if you will, how we got into this document.
Yep.
Your thoughts on that.
Built the document just to kind of align our internal team and then people we work with. And it's kind of become a little bit more of a foundational alignment tool to be able to help everyone in the company and beyond understand that if you don't know how things became the way they did, then it's hard to be able to understand what needs to change to be able to adapt from there. So I've got a little feedback there for a second. Biggest thing I would say is that there's just this gap that occurred from the online revolution that took place, that other industries were forced to make large changes into how they think about marketing themselves and how to generate leads and how to manage those, could then compare to what took place in multifamily. And we saw a little bit of what caused this gap in automotive when we were in there, but we saw automotive break free from it. And ultimately, this gap is the transition into taking control of your advertising, spending it digitally, really leaning into the website of where you're capturing all your leads and opportunities, and then obsessing over the conversion of traffic to lead, where all the lead sources are, then lead into the next step into trying to get appointments, in this case, tours scheduled, and on down it goes. And we just haven't seen that discipline be able to be there in multifamily as much as what we've seen it in other industries. And we boil that down into that you really only change when stimuli is actually causing you to. And the ILSs were there in multifamily to immediately pick up this gap from, well, I used to advertise and people would call and walk in and I'd have it be qualified. Well, now I can just do this digitally and I'm just going to still do it with the ILS. And everything was able to remain the same in multifamily for quite some time and keep operating the way that the industry always had. Meanwhile, the other industries with marketing and sales teams, leasing team in this case, just continue to be able to evolve in how they went about marketing tactics. And so happy to dig into those marketing tactics, but hopefully that kind of summarizes this gap that have developed from all these other industries in digital marketing versus why the multifamily industry was enabled to not necessarily have to worry about it for quite some time.
It does. It does summarize it. And I think you brought up a really great point in a conversation we had earlier that, previously, let's say 20, 25 years ago, you got a phone call or you got a walk-in, but it was a person. Yeah. I mean, it was an actual conversation, a person in front of you that you could start and finish the full leasing engagement with.
Yep.
And then we shifted into more of, we have very few walk-ins now. And phone calls feel to me and to those that are within our multifamily marketer community, feels like phone calls come at the point where the prospect is kind of desperate for information, and they've done all the research they possibly can, and now they really do need a human being to answer a few more questions.
Yep.
But you look at our industry and our lead to lease conversion, and at our very best, we convert about 8% of our total leads. So that leaves 92% of the pipeline still ready to be tapped into to some degree, but we haven't really broken out of the model of here's how we have always responded to those leads that came from ILSs, which those leads are generally the ones that are looking and going to close in like 60 to 90 days. But we need to learn to be better at managing leads that come in now but aren't going to lease for 2 years, especially considering there's a huge population of empty nesters that are going to come into our multifamily properties or already are. And there's a population of folks that are moving across the state line and may not make that super fast, but they're starting the process early. So how do we train our leasing teams or train our technology or, structure our systems to allow for our teams to respond to leads the way they need to be responded to for whatever stage they are in the buying process?
Well, we have, I think it's part of a larger strategy on how to be thinking around digital marketing, but just this specific piece within that strategy, I think it starts with a statement of we're big believers that not all leads are created equal. Because when you get into digital marketing, especially when you're trying to also drive your website traffic and convert that into leads, you're going to get people across a variety of stages of when they're researching. So many people think that people are researching and making a decision on their where they're going to live next in this 45, 60-day period. Well, that kind of fits operationally of when units become available. So it kind of fits in the mentality of, oh, this is how that works. Well, and it also fits where traditionally leads have come into properties. Well, when they become a lead, that's at the very, very end of their researching process. And when you only have lead ways to be able to get them that are very bottom of the funnel, such as a schedule a tour or contact us or a phone call, that's what they're doing at the very end, to your point on being the desperate side of things of now's my time to make a decision. but they were working ahead of that and narrowing their decision down of who are going to be the few that I reach out to. So you have to be able to be aware that you need to be capturing leads earlier in the journey, and you can't give all of those leads and expect the leasing team to be following up on them all the same way, even if you have some assistance taking place in the CRM. Some leads require more of a focused sales conversation, and some shouldn't even be trying to be attempted to be following up on at this point because they're not quite ready to be speaking to an agent. And when it all blends all together, it's missing one of the more critical steps that every other industry took, which is what is a marketing lead and what is a sales prospect, because they're not the same thing. But in most of multifamily, we see everything just getting lumped in together and then good luck.
Right. I really want to tap into that because on both sides, whether it be it's a marketing lead and it should still rest with marketing for a while, or it's handed over to the leasing team because it's hot enough to actually start to close on. Yep. In both those situations, those teams are really lean. So you have a marketing team that maybe oversees 50 properties in a portfolio. Yep. And you have a leasing team that doesn't just do leasing when they're on property. They are spread thin across other things, and they have time in their day to work the CRM system. But how long should a lead stay within marketing, and how do you know when it's hot enough to shift over to leasing? Because right now I feel like we send everything to leasing and then they just try their best to, I call it follow-up fling. I responded, I claimed it, it's in the CRM, I did the next step, and now if it lands in my tickler in the CRM, I'm going to do the next step again. But that's not the best scenario. We want to give them the leads that they can personally attach to.
I think, the answer, unfortunately, for podcast purposes, it depends. I think it depends on what the status of the team is.
It's a perspective for a lot of us, though, on leads stay with marketing. Usually marketing passes the leads and then we're on to next ad.
It's this overall strategy that changes from thinking of marketing as just an executor of certain actions and then all the work gets done by the leasing team, to actually marketing becomes much more of the conversion funnel and is actually a driver of the business, not just a proactive and being able to predict what is necessary driver of the business, than just an executor of the basic steps that marketing should do because the leasing team handles everything. So there really has to be good alignment between the marketing and the leasing team to be able to be understanding what is needed. And what goes to the leasing team should go up and down depending upon what the leasing needs are, how busy they are, because obviously there's nothing better than if you actually had a human reaching out and having a conversation and doing everything they should be doing on every lead, but you already just covered how busy they already are. And then we know they end up with too many leads already in there to be able to be doing that with. So then becomes the game of how do I cherry pick what leads I need to work on and how do I do the processes with the rest to be able to feel like that I'm not going to get in trouble for doing things. So it really takes an understanding of what are the leases that are needed. That helps be able to predict, if you know your conversion funnel well, what you should be spending to drive traffic to your website, because you'll historically know what your conversion ends up being. And then there's technology that helps to be able to be qualifying the leads for a leasing team to be able to know what are the levers you want to determine when it actually becomes ready for that leasing team. So it can depend, but our philosophy is unless you're having leasing agents that are just sitting around with nothing to do, then the best follow-up that you can end up doing is trying to be able to get immediate answers to the prospects as quick as you can and be looking to where either they schedule a tour, is when you're now getting your leasing team involved to really do that personal reach out to increase the tour schedule to the show, or when there's a deeper conversation that the prospect triggers saying, I'd like to be able to have a deeper conversation. Can I speak to an agent? Otherwise, the consumer, the prospective renter, is not wanting to speak to someone just because you want to speak to them. Making them wait 24 hours to get an answer to a question is not the best way to keep yourself in the research cycle they're going through to evaluate. Letting them know exactly the quick answer to their question is a way to enable them to be ready to speak to you when they are, but you need to be ready to be able to be having that conversation when they are, and you can't get that done if you're missing 50% of the phone calls because everyone's so busy with everything they're doing or handling all these leads they're not getting to anyway. So it's really breaking down that work as much as possible to enable marketing to generate as many leads as they possibly can, as efficiently as they can, be able to nurture and follow up with those to qualify out what is necessary for the leasing team in order to be able to meet their goals that they have to fill that property.
Right. We've talked to that there always seems to be a shortage of good business intelligence from the marketing perspective on really identifying when you need to amp up your lead and your marketing spend and when you're able to amp down. It feels like a lot of marketers and owners are trapped in this, like, I'll spend it if I need it, or it's not budgeted. But, we don't budget vacancy loss either. That's never been something I write into budgets. And you try to avoid it, and you should be able to head it off a little bit by knowing what your lease expiration model looks like. But sometimes you get hit with a little more availability than you intended to. And that's not necessarily the time to start pulling the trigger on the ad spend budget, is when you actually have vacancy. It would have been running a cohesive and consistent campaign to have leads funneling in that are ready at all times throughout the year to convert. Not everybody wants to convert in 60 to 90 days. Some people want to hang out there for a year and maybe thought they were ready to convert, but realized they aren't. They really don't have the financial means to do it right now. But are we getting, as an industry, to a point where we can budget this way? I mean, we're coming up on budget season. Is the industry getting more sophisticated to a point where we can budget consistently on ad spend and ebb and flow, or are we still locked into contracts that don't allow us to do that?
I think the industry is reaching a point where they're wanting to figure it out. I think that's been different than previously, where status quo has been okay. And we're actually big believers in, your owner statement of we'll spend it if we need it. We actually think that's the way all advertising should be. I mean, if you're getting enough opportunities, you shouldn't be spending just to be able to be spending, or in a fixed contract that you're continuing to have to be able to be spending upon. You should be able to ramp down at that point. Likewise, you should be able to be looking at the conversion funnel data of what the historical conversion has been, what's in your pipeline, and then definitely what do you also have in your database of leads that you've built up that you can expect to be able to be generating leases from, to be able to know if I have 10 leases that are going to be necessary to be able to hit the goals that we have 60 days from now, 90 days from now, how am I sitting right now and comfort level of that? Those will be filled within the existing spend that I have, or can I be able to ramp that up? And it becomes difficult when everything is around an ILS first strategy versus actually taking control of your advertising and being able to flex what you're doing with PPC to be able to meet those needs, to be able to ramp up and ramp down. You're able to then predict what is going to be necessary on the spend level, because you'll predict on what you need from a traffic level to generate leads, to then be able to know the timing it goes down into the leases. And that's just a mathematical equation that you can't do if you don't have the clean data.
Right.
So that's one thing that has to be able to be solved upon, that we continue to be able to refine. But you also have to have the conversion through that as tight as possible, because it doesn't matter how much you put up top if you have a bunch of leaky bucket. So a lot of people think about data of knowing the clean attribution source. That is one piece of the data, but you really need to spot, okay, am I actually getting the website traffic to lead conversion that is necessary to actually make the strategy work? What are you doing on increasing the website conversion? What are you doing on nurturing the follow-up leads? Is your lead to tour correct? Is your scheduled to show correct? Looking at all these means you might not even have an advertising challenge. You might need to plug in a leaky bucket situation before you even think about advertising. So when you say, is the industry ready? We're having more and more of these conversations around the digital marketing strategy that other industries utilize, and what has been assembled to be able to make that be possible in multifamily. And so I don't think it's an easy decision for multifamily to say, oh, we're just going to change like this, because you really have to be able to assemble the right technology, expertise, and services to be able to pull it off. But we're hearing more and more of please give me a different route than what we've been doing the past 20 years, because it just doesn't seem to be working the way we need it to anymore.
We're hearing that too. Our team runs a lot of, we call them our stride reports, and we run a digital prospect experience audit to identify where the friction factor is and that digital marketing to human leasing agent handoff. And I think that's really a starting point, is identifying where the friction is, where things are broken, and you're not getting a seamless experience. But at what point do you seem to have clients coming to you that they know their pain point? They know they need to fix it, but you and I have talked about this. Sometimes it's a big enough lift that you almost feel like you're breaking the engine while you're flying the plane and then rebuilding it in the air.
Chadwell Supply is the proud sponsor of Multifamily Media Network. Chadwell Supply is the largest privately owned MRO supply company and is committed to the multifamily industry. They deliver orders the next day from local warehouses across the United States. Chadwell Supply offers valuable resources such as maintenance training, a dedicated renovations team, and procurement platform assistance, ensuring multifamily properties operate more efficiently. Now, by partnering with Chadwell Supply, they'll help communities stand out in the increasingly competitive market. So learn more at chadwellsupply.com/difference.
Yeah, so you certainly wouldn't tackle all the fleet.
Best to approach that.
Yeah, you certainly wouldn't tackle your entire fleet while it's in the air as an approach to let's change out what this is. So I think it's really understanding the dynamics that occur when you start trying to be able to generate your own leads from organic and PPC as your first strategy first. And so your website becomes much more than just a nice looking brochure around everything the property has to offer. It has to be set up to be converting as much traffic to lead as possible. And then when you're doing that, you can't have everything just go into CRM because they're going to get a variety of different timelines of where people are looking. So then you have to have the automation, and you have to have your Google business profile page set up appropriately. And what we know is that marketing teams are not in a position to take all this on at one time. So it's really being there to make sure that the strategy and the process is understood as clearly as possible. And usually there's good buy-in on that. And then it gets into the execution of the steps that have to take place. And that's just meeting as a marketer, meeting to where your asset owners may be and the comfort level of adjusting to it. But it's looking at, well, what is the biggest leaks we have in our conversion funnel? Is it lead to tour? Or are we actually not getting the right conversion of traffic to lead on the website? Where are the biggest leaky buckets that can be addressed? And then how do we slowly look at picking off some properties to be able to make sure we really buy into the strategy and have the system set up? And then from there onwards, it goes in the portfolio. So it is definitely not we're budgeting now, we're going to make this change in 30 days across our entire portfolio. It's bigger than that. The reward is worth there financially to get it done. Plus, it's just when you're operating the way the rest of other industries there's so many more learnings that can take place than just kind of being stuck in an older way of doing it. So everything gets easier. More people can help you within more of the traditional digital marketing strategy, and it's learning the strategy and process and then planning out in steps from there. And every client, every marketer is in a different situation, has to be consulted through.
Absolutely. I'm a big believer in running those KPIs and figuring out your baseline measurements so that you have a starting point. And then
Absolutely.
as you start to develop and onboard solutions, measuring them again to see where improvement is happening. So I love when people like you come into the industry because you come with a different perspective and you're not afraid to keep pushing through to fix where we get stuck in our own way sometimes.
Yeah,
So
nothing's more annoying than the person that comes from the outside and is like, well, why aren't you just doing this? That's where it kind of back to that understanding why it hasn't occurred as much in multifamily as in other
right.
industries, to really focus in on how do you help that communication take place. And it's not a very marketing and oriented industry, right? It's a very financial and operational one. So it's really making sure the financial value of what is taking place there is clear to the accounting heads, very clear to the operational side of managing the property, that it's clear to the value that's taking place to them, and then also clear to the marketer on how this is actually not going to require a great deal of more time from you. Once it's set up and you need to be helped going through it, it actually is going to enable you to be in a much more attractive position of what you communicate marketing does if you're fee-based, on being able to have that be an attractive set of like, look how we manage advertising and marketing leads to be able to help you be able to make more money, asset owner. Or in an owner operated, being able to communicate to the executives of look what marketing's doing to be able to be a driver and a predictor of what we need to spend, not just reacting last second or on the whims of other people's gut level decision. We have this data to be able to show what needs to take place. And I always use analogies, and you brought up the kind of plane, changing the plane in the air. You would never at this point be comfortable getting in a plane that was just pure instrument panel and data telling you there's no pilot in there and the plane is flying free. Likewise, you probably wouldn't be comfortable getting in with a pilot in a plane that isn't leveraging a great deal of data to be able to be comfortable just relying on that gut instinct. So it's that combination of the technology and the data and what marketing experts, along with the property nuance that the marketing team will know, to really be functioning together on what is the best way to achieve the results from property based on what the data is showing, the process to be able to maximize the results from the advertising, but then working together with all that nuance to see what is data showing to, you had a concession change that is impacting your show to the lease. So what can we do to address that? Or it's up here in the funnel and this needs to end up being addressed. So that's just where things have to be able to continue to go in multifamily, but every stakeholder has to be able to be bought into the value of what comes from it. Otherwise, you run the risk of things falling apart. So that's why a few properties at a time, proving it out, and then it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's ideal, is proving out a couple of theories. Tell me what it looks like when Perq is onboarded to a property and you're able to fully work within the system, the lead funnel, the leasing engagement, and prove out the analytics. What does it look like for a property that's succeeding on Perq?
Yeah, your renter acquisition cost is going to drop considerably, just because you're going to be able to be more flexible and actually driving the right type of traffic and the right amount of traffic, as opposed to overspending on fixed contracts with other companies that are almost in between you and the advertising directly into search engines. So that's really looking at the SEO as well as PPC to be able to create that more flexibility. And then we're dramatically increasing the conversion funnel. So we find websites are usually getting about a third of the conversion that they should be. So it's creating those conversion renter tools to be able to apply into the website and giving a website experience that captures more website traffic. It's getting your Google business profile page where most people find you if they're not in love with an iOS app that is already on their phone, and we're not trying to win those. But when people are Googling as a start in their process, how are you getting exposed earlier above the large organic rankings that those firms are going to have? And how are you now appearing earlier? But then when they go to your business profile page, it's set up with the right content, the right listings, ability to schedule a tour directly from Google. Big believer that needs to be happening. All of this stuff starts addressing, can't be missing phone calls. So given the solution for that, where your just conversion funnel gets addressed, then it's into the team side of the equation on the automation. All of that adds up to where we find somewhere between 25 at a minimum to 75% reduction on the renter acquisition cost just by getting these conversion leaks addressed, and then having the data to more intelligently know when and where to spend the advertising.
You just mentioned two of the areas that we spot quite a bit of friction on, and I consider it to be very low-hanging fruit, wins within reach, really easy to fix. One of them is the Google business profile. Mm-hmm. It's amazing to me how often that's not completely maximized. And sometimes I look at that because it's a free listing, so the time isn't invested as much in it. But there's still means there's a labor charge to keep it updated and keep it fresh. And it's surprising to me how often that goes unnoticed, that it's not updated, and how impactful it is once you update it, how quickly it's impactful. And the other area is answering phone calls. It's not uncommon to see a 50% missed call rate or higher on properties. And it kind of breaks my heart because no leasing agent is trying to miss calls.
Yeah, agreed.
But we're missing them nonetheless. And yet we are more willing to rush out and spend on, plugging in a chatbot or plugging in AI into a website without the rest of the experience smoothed out.
Agreed.
But we're not as willing to grab hold of that piece of answering calls when that actually is a human being on the other end. And I say it all the time, like, that's where a conversation starts and ends. You can start a conversation in a chatbot, but the prospect can drop off anytime they feel like it and not come back on at all. That doesn't happen on a phone call. You actually have the opportunity to talk through discovering what their need is, talking about whether or not you have the solution, and moving to the next step of either a tour or an application, or we're going to, touch base with you every couple of months while you work your way towards your moving date.
The problem on both sides is that nobody is going to be able to be getting, let me have 3 more leasing agents attached to answering the call, and I need 3 more marketing people to be able to be doing everything that's necessary. So that's where
it's almost like we're surviving without those 2 things updated. We're not spending money on it right now. So I don't want to spend money on something I haven't needed to spend money on. But those 2 alone could make such a big difference.
And you see some of the larger companies that have the scale capabilities to be able to start addressing and assembling some of the same digital marketing funnel that we believe in. The problem is then what about the mid-size and smaller that aren't ever going to have the scale to be able to truly be able to invest and be able to get that done? And so that's where you're going to have to rely on partners to be able to make sure this is all in place, because you can't go and update the Google business profile across, let's call it 50 properties and feel like you're staying on top of that when you're trying to get that done in a 2-3 person marketing team. And the same thing on answering the phone calls. You're not going to have a solution of just wanting to be able to answer the phone call more or adding more people. Neither one is realistic on thinking that's how it's going to address it. So there is this technology understanding of how do you enable the leasing team to have more time for deeper conversations? And then how are you also being able to use technology to enable marketers to be able to get all the conversion steps in place so that both can end up being more impactful into the business? Marketer being able to be more predictive and being able to be more flexible on where they're spending advertising. That only works if all this is getting done. So how are you given the means to have that be accomplished? And leasing teams can have deeper phone calls, but only if they're working with more qualified ones and not expected to be doing not all leads are created equal. So how are you getting them focused on the best ones? And that's our philosophy and what we help to be able to consult clients from, but it's addressing the time gaps. And that's only going to get done with technology and then a complete system from all the way from spending advertising down into the conversion of what the team is working on. And there's other companies and us working on being able to assemble that together. And it's choosing which one is right for you and being able to before and after case studies, because nobody's going to move if there's not value to it. But when that becomes meaningful dollars, then you start getting people behind what needs to take place.
Yeah, we all want to see someone else go first and prove it out. But, it all comes down to exactly why I named this podcast Optimized, because Optimized is all about making things as perfect as it can be, as functional or as efficient as it can be. And that seems to be the theory of 2024 is doing more with less. So in the spirit of not trying to increase our marketing budgets, we've got to figure out a way to make them work a whole lot more efficiently within the constraints of the budgets we have. And that is often looking for resources that can help us work the areas that we might be having leaks in the bucket, as you call them, more frequently, and plug those holes with systems that really can cohesively move all the way through the funnel into the leasing conversion to better performance across the whole process. It's more high quality leads rather than more leads.
Yep. And how you go about generating them. Because you have to be able to take control on how you're generating them to be able to be efficient there, to then be having the nurture and the automation to flush out what is the most qualified. But that's really it's really working on to do more with less. It's really looking at where is it within the existing you have to work within the existing budget, but what we find is that people throwing Band-Aids on whatever the most common pain is. And so when we're really working with clients, it's consulting through what are the pains that you're trying to address, that you're out there seeking technology solutions or providers, because it's usually just one symptom of the actual root issue, you haven't embraced a full digital marketing strategy, but you're in a digital leasing world the way the consumer is operating. So you can go and apply this little technology as an assistant to help the team in the CRM, and they're going to get some help from that. Who doesn't love an assistant to be able to help get things done? But they're still managing all the leads in there the same, just the assistant is helping to be able to do some work. You're really going to have to be able to lean into what is a normal digital marketing process from the very beginning all the way down through it. And then there's different technologies people can use to be able to get that done, but you have to be able to be knowledgeable to know each one of those that have to be able to get addressed to be able to make this work. And we find that's the biggest challenge in multifamily is just being aware of the actual root issue, which is, are you actually operating in a digital marketing strategy that is proven, or are you still in a kind of an older world throwing technology at different pains that are never going to add up in a way that actually becomes meaningful and just becomes a new technology to try to figure out how to manage with an old way of operating?
Right. And then we have more dashboards, more reporting to pull, doesn't speak to each other. Yeah, it's a challenge out there for sure. So tell me, I want to shift us into wrapping up a little bit here, but where is the easiest place, do you think, for marketers or owners, operators to start if they know if they're nodding their head right now that yes, this is all of this
Mhm.
is my problem. Where's the best place to start to try to identify how big of a solution you need to fix the problem you have?
Yeah, I think it's first like learning the digital marketing strategy. I mean, in other industries, it was called inbound marketing. So we're not, trying to be evangelists around inbound marketing. We're just calling it digital marketing strategy and process. But this has been there for many years on how you're actually spending money with search engines, how to be able to be
Yeah.
generating traffic, and then understanding the leaks in the bucket that have probably caused a lot of properties to be in a little bit of purgatory. Yeah, I'd love to go this direction, but we tried a little bit and it doesn't work. And it's like, well, did you try just spending money on PPC or did you actually address the entire strategy? So I think that's the biggest thing to be able to, does this logically make sense? And if it does, because it might not be right for everyone, but if it does, then it's like, what are the properties that actually your renter acquisition cost is just not and continuing to increase, and you're also not getting the results that you need from an occupancy. And let's actually start there and looking at, okay, this is already a difficult property on being able to achieve what it is. We're not getting the results. We're not from the way we're spending money currently. And then actually having that before and after to be able to test it and break it down. So with Perk, we're set up to
What
be able to
is
have
that before and after? What do you think the right timeline is to start putting a solid fix in place and see results? Because
it.
we in this industry tend to want a very quick fix, but it's really more like 6 months, don't you think?
Well, I think it can be. It's the evolution, like you're going to continue to be able to improve because once you have data and you're able to measure things, then you're able to keep optimizing. I'll use your title of this. You
Hmm.
keep optimizing
Right.
versus just stuck and it was a band-aid and did it work or did it not work? So, we know that marketers, and especially in this industry, are stressed for time. And it can't be like a very elaborate, time consuming or piece by piece. So it's starting with the full solution. Definitely addressing the conversion leak side that make the PPC more of a viable opportunity. But you're looking at a 90-day process to really be able to be seeing the results that come from it on the test properties. And really, it's 60 days. The last 30 days is really being looked to be able to optimize, where it goes next into the next phases into additional properties. But that's enabling the full solution to be able to be put in place in 90 days. So we like to say we're solving this 25-year evolution gap that multifamily did not make in this 90
In
day
90
period,
days.
90-day period to be able to evaluate. Now it's not done to your point, because then it
Right.
has to be able to go beyond the test properties and be able to get put in place. But then the beautiful thing is you're constantly then armed with data to be able to be much more of the predictive conversations around what is necessary to make this property be successful. And it just
Yep.
helps elevate the marketer up in being able to have an impact to the asset owners or to the other executives on what marketing is able to see and do that can be able to help things be able to be better here in 90 days from now or 120. It's amazing the conversations that change of, we're going to run into a little bit of a problem in occupancy if we don't address this, because I can see right now we don't have quite enough in our pipeline. And that's different than it being too late or not knowing what to do with
Right.
it. When you're able to raise the red flag and have the answer, good things happen.
How nice to be able to spot it.
And it's getting that data
Tell
organized.
me, I always like to ask my guests too, what do you personally do to optimize? How do you keep moving 1% better in your workday, in your professional life, your personal life? You are, every time I talk to you, like you are biting off such big industry solutions and constantly moving forward. Tell us how you wake up every morning and just chase that 1% better.
Yeah, it is. I'm a big believer in pressure and time. Shawshank movie, pressure and time. Change geology or marketing or personal. If you want something to happen, it's pressure and time. So I think the clearer you get things about what you want to happen in your life or in your business, um, it's just easier to be able to apply the pressure and time to it. And it's amazing how the universe brings you answers that you weren't even aware of that you needed when you have clarity about what you're trying to be able to get done. So that's clarity around the vision that we have in the business. So that document that you spoke of went a long way, and like this is what we're solving. And then all of a sudden it just becomes a relentless day after day. A client has a specific pain of like, great, we can pull that forward in our roadmap because it fits what we have before. So that's where we're doing the same thing that we're trying to be able to bring to multifamily marketers, this digital marketing strategy for ourselves. But then as a business, it's just the clarity of what we're after and then having the right approach to just be tackling it every single day. But without that clarity, you're just reacting and bouncing from one thing to the
Yeah.
other. And that pressure and time can't add up into actually making a meaningful difference. So that's my personal motto. The clearer I can get what I want to have happen, the easier it is to apply pressure.
Yeah. I like to also call that clarity the why behind the what. When everybody on the team knows why you're doing what you're doing, it becomes a lot easier to move forward together.
Yep. If you don't know exactly where you're trying to head, any direction will do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm excited about where you're heading, and let's tell our listeners where they can get more information on Perq and follow you as a thought leader.
Yeah. So you can find me on LinkedIn. For sure is probably the best place for this industry. And then on our website, perq.com, we'll also be at NAA. We're going to be handling a panel there and actually have a little bit of a calculator tool that will help be able to give a resource and an understanding on how to get more predictive with your advertising spend and also how to address the conversion funnel. So that'd be a good place to be able to learn more about us as well.
I'm very excited about that panel. I'm really honored to be participating on it. And the other marketers that are panelists with me are incredibly intelligent and experienced, and everybody brings a different perspective. And that calculator is going to be something really valuable to walk away with. So
Yeah,
I encourage people to come out to that as well.
Yeah.
Do you know your booth number?
I don't. I'm going to get in trouble for that one. We're in the app. Perq.
You insure it.
Yep, and feel free to email me if there's any specific questions at shill@perq. So happy to answer anything directly as well.
You got it. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for being a panelist in the AA. It should be a good time.
Yeah. As always, listeners, we hope that you got something out of this conversation that helps you optimize and chase that 1% better.
Thank you again to Chadwell Supply for sponsoring this episode. Chadwell Supply delivers unforgettable service with next day delivery, online and in-person maintenance training, procurement platform, assistance to make your ordering simple. Visit chadwellsupply.com/difference to learn how Chadwell Supply will make your day better.